So the Glens Falls Post-Star prints an article about the LaChute River. The LaChute River, and how the state of New York permitted the dumping of 15,000 gallons of sewage into Lake Champlain. The toilet is again being flushed with permits from the state of New York. So to the editor and the publisher of the Glens Falls Post-Star, and to the Senate and the congressional and the federal delegation for Glens Falls, New York, Warren County, it would appear that this flushing of Lake George and all the sewage and the leachate down the LaChute River has a very large history. They've been using that LaChute River to flush Lake George and to flush the sewers of Ticonderoga into Lake Champlain for well over 1.5 centuries. The toilet lake that this guy right here, old Judson Witham, has been exposing for a very long time. You can visit the poisoning of Lake Champlain. Now let's get on to the, and the poisoning and the sewage of Lake George. Now let's get on to the purpose of this video. All the records associated with the up and down water on Lake George, you know, the toilet reservoir, where they build up the lake and then flush it, and they build up the lake and then they flush it to flush that sewage down the LaChute River. All those records that the state of New York, Warren County, and particularly Department of Environmental Conservation has with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and the EPA. All of those records are being demanded. They must be produced and publicly published. How long has this flushing of the lake been going on, particularly in the winter time, during ice and snow cover, when they flush Lake George, the big toilet reservoir, the big toilet lake? Now to the entire staff at the Post-Star, how many times has sewage been flushed down the LaChute River while Lake George is being used like a giant toilet bowl? That's a question to the Post-Star. And to all of the people that are reading these articles, and all of the people that understand that the poisoning of Lake George and the poisoning of Lake Champlain are a reality. And you can get a hold of Roger Smith at Lake George Park Commission. You can get a hold of Billy Mason and their attorney there, Tom West, at the Lake George Association, the Fund for Lake George, Chris Novinsky, the waterkeeper on Lake George, and ask them, is Lake George being used to flush the LaChute River? And how is it that Lake George is cleansed? How do they keep all that sewage leachate that's turning Lake George green? How do they keep that relatively under control? By large water releases, by flushing the lake with environmental flushes, dumping large amounts of water out of Lake George in the wintertime drawdown. They're using old Dam A and dam number 230 to accomplish their wintertime lake flushing. The dilution of the pollution is the solution. So to my friend Skip Stranahan up there in Bay Road, and French Mountain Environmental, and John Bruns, and John Stranahan, and Bobby Cox, Robert Cox, and all of my other friends around Lake George, gee, golly whiz, the LaChute, the LaChute River is being flushed with permission from the state. The state's records, the county's records, the federal government records on the flushing of this lake They need to be produced. The entire category of all of those records need to be produced to show the historical flushing, the Lake George lake level dumping. The dumping of the lake at Lake George into the LaChute River to flush the toilet. All of those records need to be produced, along with the destruction of the boathouses, the destruction of the docks, the marinas. You see these up and down water levels? They made Alger Mason and Howard Mason wealthy men, along with all the other dock reconstruction contractors. Get a hold of John Mason, Richard Mason, Bobby Mason, and William Mason. And I forget the sister's name, Mary Jane, or I think that was the mother's name. The Masons and the Meads. Get a hold of the Meads. And let's discuss the up and down toilet bowl levels, the toilet reservoir of the toilet lake, Lake George, as they flush all this sewage into Lake Champlain. The Post-Star, the Glens Falls Post-Star, is a material witness to the vast destruction of islands, shorelines, boathouses, and docks on Lake George, New York. The Post-Star are material witnesses, and the Lake George Park Commission, particularly Ranger Frank Liam Bruno, and the people like, Ellen Apperson Brown, Union College, the State University System, the law school at Albany, the list just goes on and on. Betty Little, the town of Queensbury, the Warren County Board of Supervisors. Let's talk about this Lake George toilet reservoir mill pond and the flushing of the lake to get, the sewage to move down there into front of Fort Ticonderoga at Mount Independence and Mount Defiance, there at the, southern end of Lake Champlain. The Post-Star reports that yet again, over a period of 5 hours, 15,000 gallons of sewage were dumped and flushed into Lake George. Yeah, let's dump it in Lake George. Why dump it into Lake Champlain? Dump it up in Lake George during the tourist season. Hell, why not? It's okay. You can get a permit, right? Dump all that sewage in Lake George with all the other sewage that's already in Lake George. So to the, the publishers and the editors and all of the reporting staff at the Post-Star, seems that old Judson Witham, the son of the Swamp Fox, again is spot on. Produce all the records. Skip Stranahan, John Stranahan, all of my friends up in the North Country, John Rathburn, John Boone, all these other people. There's huge numbers of people in the Adirondacks, the Adirondack Almanac, Bill Hall, I can name names all day long, that are witness to the fact that Lake George is a big mill pond. It's a mill pond because of Dam A. Because of Dam 230, it's the big toilet flusher. It's a lake flusher. The flushing mechanism at Ticonderoga. Now,